The Tacoma Narrows Bridge is a marvel of civil engineering. Unfortunately, it was only open for 4 months before it crashed dramatically on that fateful day in November 1940. And one of the issues with that collapse is that very few artifacts actually still exist today, and many questions remain unanswered. Hello. My name is Mark Pagano. I'm a professor of mechanical engineering here at the University of Washington, Tacoma. And I've been working on this project, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge Historical Interpretive Exhibit, for about 2 years. It's been one of the highlights of my time here at UWT. Now, the story about how we actually now have one of these historical artifacts is quite interesting. It led from a protest. A leader from Burley, Washington, his name is Bruce Morse, was collecting some information to protest a geoduck farm that was going to open in his area. And when he collected information from the surrounding community, he received some information from a young man named John Paul Simon.
Issue about the gooey duck farm going in Burley Lagoon. And so the community was opposed to it. And John Paul submitted comments, and you made some very humorous remarks.
And that led to him getting introduced to me, and then me meeting with John Paul, and eventually John Paul making this wonderful donation of actually one of the suspender cables that his grandfather had collected from the bridge to the University of Washington, Tacoma.
I had no idea there was a lack of artifacts or a lack of understanding of the first bridge falling. I assumed many people had these cables sitting in their homes. And yeah, I had quite a few over the years in all different pieces. And some of the Manel pieces in my elevator were made out of other portions of the bridge.
Yeah, this is what he's talking about. But he uses it for his elevator mechanism somehow, right?
Yeah, it's a hydraulic mechanism for the elevator.
I had no idea that I had artifacts that other people didn't have access to.
Hi, my name is Brandon. I'm a mechanical engineering student here at the University of Washington, Tacoma. I'm working with Dr. Pagano here on this project of the Tacoma Narrows History Exhibit. And I also did some materials property testing here on the cable that was donated. I would like to kind of hear the story about how you even came to acquire the cable in the first place.
My grandfather was building his house, $8 with the brick a week.
He built his garage, his workshop, and then he built his house, the house that we're going to be in. Then bought a tent, put the tent here, and then started building his workshop. So I got the impression the tent was up here somewhere, and they started building the workshop. Just put on the table was one of these, Zach, see? Just one of these wires. And those are twisted into a braid, and that's what's hanging there.
Anytime he could salvage materials, that's what he would do. He would take my uncle, who was a little kid at the time, as his helper, mostly a holding boat, and he'd get out there, and he used scuba equipment when he needed. But yeah, he just slowly salvaged what he could.
There were 4 of these suspender cables at each one of those hanging sections, and then there were probably 75 or 100 sets of 4 on either side of the bridge, and all those suspender cables then are attached to the main bridge cable, the suspension cable that goes across. So these are the ones that support the weight of the bridge hanging down.
I remember him explaining that the stuff was impossibly difficult to cut. At the time, Swedish steel hacksaw blades were the hottest thing on the market. And I remember him telling me a 24-inch hacksaw blade from brand new Swedish steel could only get through a third of the cable. And that's why he ended up, instead of just breaking up the concrete and bringing home the full suspender cable with the collars and everything. It was just simpler.
And actually, this piece of suspender cable now can serve as an instrument for visitors to come and actually touch and feel a surviving portion of that bridge, which gives them a much clearer picture of what actually happened that day in 1940. 3, 2, 1. Nice.
So how do you think he would feel now? Because to him, it was just more material that he could acquire to do something with. But now it's essentially a historical artifact. What do you think? How do you think he would feel knowing that now?
I think he'd be really pleased about making this available to the public. Mm-hmm. His focus would almost always be on it being accessible to as many people as possible who want to study it. So yeah, analysis of this, what did you discover?
Throughout my research, I did see that this cable was absolutely strong enough to withhold the bridge. The ultimate tensile strength that I was getting was way above the standard properties that were for this material. And we could see how strong these cables were based on looking at the pictures and the videos of the aftermath of this collapse, where we could see that the cables are still all hanging there in their entirety, still holding up large chunks of the bridge. So we know for a fact, based on the numbers that we're getting and the images that we can see based on history, of that these cables were definitely strong enough to hold this bridge up.
From this incidental community connection to a piece of cable salvaged from the bottom of the sea, a single chain of events has brought a critical piece of history back into the limelight. This is a story of how a small act of community engagement and a generous donation can rewrite history and open the door to a new understanding of one of Washington's most iconic moments.